Okay, we're going to start project 3. So for project 3, we're going to go back a little bit to basics, and we're just going to do a hoodie for this project because some of our classes have limited time. And it's going to be a little bit of a mix of everything you've done so far. So the first thing we're going to do is create the pocket and pocket placements. Then we will create a grade rule table. So I'm giving you a grade rule table. What I'm going to ask you to actually do is just edit it. So I'm giving you most of the rules, but I'm asking you to grade a few things on your own based on other rules in the table or based on the graded spec. And then you'll have some other pieces like bands and cuffs that you'll need to grade manually. Then we will grade the pocket and pocket placements. Then we will grade our internal lines, check all of our graded specs with our measure chart that we learned to do last week, and then we'll create a marker. So everything you need to turn in for the styles at the end of this document that should be uploaded to Brightspace for you. You don't need to make any pattern adjustments. The grade table is given to you, but it's missing a few rules. You just have to complete it. And then you'll grade your pattern with the grade rules. You'll manually grade your small parts, and then you'll create an order and a marker. Okay, so I gave you a technical sketch for the pocket. There's also pocket specs on the graded spec page as well that match these. So the first thing we're going to do is go find the project 3. Okay, so we're going to go into your drive. You should have a TC322 project 3 model. Okay, you're going to save as with components, choose your folder. We're going to change it to, I'm pasting the project 3 there. We're going to change it to your initials, and this is a 2406 project. Okay, you'll click apply, make sure your model and your pieces are all changed, and say okay. The next thing we're going to do is take the rule table. So there's a rule table that says TC322 project 3. We're going to open it. And I want you to go to File, Save As, and I want you to change this to your initials 2406 to match your model. Okay, please, please, please make sure you do this. You don't overwrite the base rule table that everybody will be copying from. Okay. All right, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to open my model. Okay, I'm going to pull down all of my pieces. So I have a front, a back. You'll see all of your internal lines are already here, which should help you. Right. A hood and a bottom band. Cuff, sleeve, hood, bottom band. Okay. All right. Now let's go back to our, okay. I gave you a schematic in here. Okay. So, the blue grade points, you need to figure out the XY movements and add them to your rule table. And then these pieces down here, you're going to have to grade manually. All right. So the first thing I want to do is just go through and put these rule numbers in the table on our pattern. Then we'll go in and try to figure out what these 2, 4, 14, and 15 are. Okay. So I'm going to go into my pattern. I'm going to go to grade, assign rule table. I'm going to right click, select all, right click OK, and I'm going to find my LEL 2406 rule table that I created. And I'm going to say OK, right click OK. All right. Then I'm going to turn my nest on. You can do view all sizes under grade, or you can do Control G. You're going to right click select all, right click OK to see all sizes. Now we have no rules applied, so I see no sizes yet, and that is fine. I'm going to go to rule number, and I'm going to go around my pattern based on my schematic. And I have it on another screen, so I'm going to just follow that. And you're going to go around your pattern. Now remember that a few of your grade points don't currently have grade, like the 4 and the 2. Okay, so your graded nest will look a little bit funny to start, and then as we figure those out and add them, your graded nest will update. Okay, so you're going to go around and apply your rules as stated on your schematic. Okay. All right, so once you've added your grade rules, okay, remember you can always go to view grade rules to see the numbers to make sure you have everything put in there correctly. Let's go in and let's try to figure out what our 2, our 4, and our 14 and 15 are. 14 and 15 are our hood neck points. The rest of our hood is graded. And the 2 and the 4 are our front neck drop and shoulder point, okay? So on this handout I gave you, I did kind of spell out how you can find these yourself. So the 2, so we've always talked about the front neck drop really depends on what your high point shoulder is doing. So I already gave you a grade point for 3. So we know that the center front doesn't move in the Y direction, so we only need an X rule. So we need to base that off of the 3, okay? So I'm going to go into my grade rule table, and I'm going to look at my 3X rule, right? Because I don't want a Y rule for my center front neck. So it's grading 1/4 of an inch in the X direction, okay? So if I look at my graded spec, I want my front neck drop to grade 1/4 of an inch per size. So if I look at my pattern, I have, on my 3 grade, I have grading in an X direction 1/4 of an inch, okay? So if I also put that same X rule on my front neck drop, the difference, it will essentially move with the high point shoulder, which means the difference between, the X difference between the 2 and the 3 would be 0. So there would be no grade. If I leave it as is, it's going to grow and shrink 1/4 of an inch because I'm getting that 1/4 of an inch from the high point shoulder. And that's the grade we want. So the trick here is that the 2 actually is graded correctly. It needs a 0 grade. We can always check that by taking our, if I put my 3 rule at my high point shoulder line, and I put my 2 rule at my front neck drop line, and I copy X rule from high point shoulder to my front neck drop point endpoint, and then I copy the Y rule from my 2 to this endpoint of my high point shoulder line, okay? Now if I do graded line length and I measure this front neck drop, I get 1/4 of an inch difference, okay? Because this isn't moving, but this is moving 1/4 of an inch, okay? So our 2 grade is actually fine, okay? But I wanted you guys to kind of go through the motions and understand why. All right, so our 4, I mentioned in the notes, our 4 should get the same X movement as the 3, right? We want our shoulder line to remain parallel, our shoulder seam. So the X movement should come from the 3 rule. So let's see if I can expand this. So my 3 rule, my X movement is -1/4, -1/4, +1/4, +1/4. I'm going to do Control C, and then I'm going to go to my 4 point, and I'm going to paste Control V, okay? Now for my Y movement, I'll need to check my graded spec, right? So I need to know how much my shoulder width is grading. So if I come in here and find my shoulder width seam to seam, I have an inch grade. Okay, this is a drop shoulder style. So typically with drop shoulders, our shoulder is sort of grading with our body, right? So our body circumference is grading 2 inches per size, which means an inch per panel. So our shoulder is grading with it, okay? Because you see on our pattern, our shoulder is just about as wide as our bust is. So technically, I need an inch on each side, right? So my shoulder width is measured flat. So this is half of my shoulder width. So I need an inch in the Y direction, okay? So I'm going to go back to my grade table and I'm going to find my Y4 rule. And then remember my positive and negative. So my smaller sizes are going to grow into the body, which is the positive direction. And my larger sizes are going to grow outside of the body, which is the negative direction. So I'm going to do a positive 0.5, positive 0.5, negative 0.5, negative 0.5, okay? I'm going to save this. Okay. Now for my 14, 15. Okay, so for my hood has to sew into my neckline, right? So I need to measure what my neck is grading. I have neck drops and neck widths. However, that does not help me when it comes to the neck seam, okay? So I'm going to go to grade, measure line length, and I'm going to click on my front seam and my back seam, and I'm going to right click OK. So I see here my size difference is just under ½ an inch. Okay, so for today's purpose, I'm going to round this up and I'm going to say we're going to grade the hood seam ½ an inch. Okay, so I'm going to split that evenly. I can see from my the rest of my hood that I have a little bit of growth here and a little bit of growth here. So I'm going to put a quarter here and a quarter here. Okay. Keep in mind too, this is half of my neck circumference, but this is also half of my neck circumference. So I don't have to do any math. I'm just taking the difference between the difference of the front plus the back and splitting it front and back of the hood. Okay. So on my 14, 15, I'm going to do a X movement of, let's see, a Y movement. So my smaller sizes are going to grow into the body and my larger sizes are going to grow out of the body. So my smaller sizes will be negative and my larger sizes will be positive, and then the 15 will be switched. Okay, so I have a minus 0.25, minus 0.25, positive, positive, and then on my 15 I'm going to do the opposite, 0.25, 0.25, minus 0.25, minus 0.25. And I'm not going to do anything in the X direction because the height is already grading here. So we'll measure the graded height and make sure that it's correct once we apply these rules, okay? So I'm going to click Save. I'm going to come back to my pattern and I am going to reassign my rule table to all pieces because I've made changes to it, okay? And so when you do that, what you'll see is now, so the 2 we know we didn't change, but the 4 grade is in there and the 14, 15 grade is in there as well, okay? All right, so now that all of our grade rules are correct, now we can begin to copy grades and grade our internal lines. Remember to just, if your internal line intersects, or in the case of the bicep, almost intersects, you can use these grade rules that are already there, right? So my bust line, I can just apply a rule number of 5, okay? And then remember to get these to this side to stop at the center front, center back. You can either do edit delta, clear Y, or you can put a rule number 1 at those points, okay? So go through and grade all of your internal lines, and then we will walk through the cuff, the band, and then we'll create the pocket.